The rain came down, like God was washing away every lie this city ever told. 17-year-old Zuri Thompson stood under the awning of a closed jewelry store on Fifth Avenue, watching the world pass by in blurs of umbrellas and expensive shoes. Her sneakers, donated, 2 sizes too big, stuffed with newspaper, were soaked through. Her jacket, thin as promises, clung to her shoulders like a second skin made of cold and regret. She wasn't supposed to be here, not on this side of town, where the buildings touched clouds and the people inside them never touched the ground. But the shelter on Lenox had run out of beds 3 nights ago, and Zuri had learned that survival meant moving, always moving, even when your feet screamed and your stomach folded in on itself like an empty prayer. That's when she saw it, a wallet, black leather, lying there on the wet concrete, like it had been waiting for her specifically, like God himself had dropped it just to see what she would do. Zuri's heart started pounding. Not the excited kind of pounding, the scared kind, the kind that comes when you know something's about to change your life, and you don't know if it's going to save you or destroy you. She looked around. The streets were crowded but empty, the way New York always is, full of people who don't see each other, don't want to see each other. Nobody was looking for a wallet. Nobody was looking for anything except the next place to be dry. Zuri bent down slowly, her fingers trembling as they closed around the leather. It was heavy, real, the kind of wallet that cost more than everything she'd owned in her entire life combined. She opened it. Her breath caught in her throat. There were credit cards, black ones, the kind with no limit. A driver's license with a woman's face on it, Celeste Whitmore, age 42, address in Tribeca, and cash. So much cash Zuri had to blink to make sure her eyes weren't lying. Hundreds, thousands, maybe, more money than she'd seen since before her mama got sick, before the hospital bills, before the eviction, before the world decided Zuri Thompson didn't matter anymore. Her hands started shaking harder. She could take it. She could take just enough to eat, to get a room for the night, to buy shoes that fit. Nobody would know. Nobody would care. People lost wallets every day in this city, and rich people, people with Tribeca addresses and black credit cards, they had insurance for this kind of thing. They'd be fine. But Zuri wouldn't be fine. She knew that. She knew what taking this money would make her, what it would turn her into. And she'd promised herself, back when Mama was still alive, still fighting, still believing, that no matter how hard it got, no matter how hungry she became, she wouldn't become the person the world expected her to be. Zuri closed the wallet. She looked at the address again. Tribeca. That was downtown. That was 40 blocks in the rain, with shoes that didn't fit, and a body that hadn't eaten since yesterday morning's half-bagel from the church basement. But it was the right thing to do. So she started walking. The rain didn't let up. If anything, it got worse, like the universe was testing her, asking her if she was sure about this decision, if she really wanted to be good, when being good never paid the rent, or filled the stomach, or kept the lights on. People rushed past her, their faces hidden under umbrellas, their voices sharp with irritation, at the weather, at the traffic, at the inconvenience of it all. None of them looked at Zuri. She was invisible, just another black girl with nowhere to go, part of the city's background noise. By the time she reached the building on Franklin Street, her whole body was shaking, not just from cold, from exhaustion, from hunger, from the weight of carrying someone else's fortune while carrying nothing of her own. The building was glass and steel, the kind that reflected the sky and made you feel small just looking at it. A doorman stood inside the lobby, dry and warm in his uniform, looking at his phone. Zuri pushed through the revolving door. The doorman looked up. His face changed immediately. Not hostile, exactly, but closed. The look black folks know too well. The look that says, "You don't belong here. Can I help you?" His voice was polite but cold. The kind of polite that's really a question. "What are you doing in my lobby?" Zuri held up the wallet, water dripping from her fingers onto the marble floor. I found this. It belongs to someone in this building. Celeste Whitmore. The doorman's eyebrows went up. He looked at the wallet, then at Zuri, then at the wallet again. She could see him doing the math in his head, trying to figure out the angle, what this dripping wet black girl really wanted. You found it, he said slowly. Yes, sir, on Fifth Avenue, about 40 blocks from here. I walked it back because Zuri's voice cracked. She hated how weak she sounded, how desperate. Because it's the right thing to do. The doorman stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone on his desk. Ms. Whitmore, this is Roberto in the lobby. I have a young lady here. She says she found your wallet. There was a pause. Zuri couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she saw Roberto's expression change. Surprise, then something else. Respect, maybe. Yes, ma'am. I'll send her up. He hung up and looked at Zuri differently now. Not like she was invisible, not like she didn't belong, just different. 23rd floor, apartment 2301, elevators on your right. Zuri nodded, too tired to speak, and walked toward the elevator. Her shoes squeaked on the marble, leaving wet footprints behind her, like evidence of where she'd been, what she'd done. The elevator was mirrored on all sides. Zuri saw herself, really saw herself. For the first time in days, her hair was plastered to her head. Her face was gaunt, shadows under her eyes deep enough to fall into. Her jacket hung off her frame like a flag on a windless day. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl with nothing, returning everything. The elevator chimed. 23rd floor. Zuri stepped out into a hallway that smelled like money. Clean, fresh, with a hint of something expensive she couldn't name. There was only one door, 2301. She knocked. The door opened immediately, like the woman on the other side had been waiting. Celeste Whitmore stood there in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than a car. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, her makeup perfect, despite the late hour. She was beautiful in that intimidating way successful black women often are, like she'd fought for every inch of space she occupied and wasn't about to give any of it back. But her eyes were soft, searching. "You're the girl who found my wallet," Celeste said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." Zuri held it out with both hands, like an offering. "I found it on Fifth Avenue. Everything's still in there. I didn't take anything. I wanted to make sure you got it back." Celeste took the wallet slowly, her fingers brushing Zuri's. They were warm. Zuri's were ice. Celeste opened the wallet, checking the contents quickly but thoroughly. The cash, the cards, everything Zuri had promised was still there. Then Celeste looked up, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. The kind that goes deeper than names or addresses or the space between rich and poor. "You walked 40 blocks in the rain," Celeste said quietly, "in shoes that don't fit, to return my wallet." Zuri didn't know how Celeste knew about the shoes, but she did. Maybe it was obvious. Maybe it was written on her face, in the way she stood, in the way survival always leaves marks. It was the right thing to do, Zuri said. And her voice didn't crack this time. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped aside. "Come in, please." Zuri hesitated. "I don't want to bother you, ma'am. I just wanted to." "I know what you wanted to do. You did it. Now come inside before you catch pneumonia, on my conscience." There was something in Celeste's voice, authority mixed with kindness, the kind Zuri's mama used to have, that made her obey. She stepped into the apartment, and the door closed behind her with a soft, final click. But what happened next shocked them both. Because Celeste Whitmore had already made a decision. And Zuri Thompson's life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The apartment was like stepping into a different world. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the rain streaking down the glass like tears on a giant's face. The furniture was all clean lines and soft fabrics, The kind you see in magazines, but never think real people actually own. Art hung on the walls, not prints, but originals. Zuri could tell by the way the paint caught the light. This was success. This was what happened when you made it. When you climbed out of the hole the world tried to bury you in, and built yourself a castle where nobody could touch you. Sit, Celeste said, gesturing to a cream-colored sofa. I'm getting you a towel and something warm to drink. Don't move. Zuri sat carefully, afraid to get the expensive fabric wet, but too exhausted to stand. Her body was starting to shut down, now that she'd stopped moving, the adrenaline wearing off, and leaving only the bone-deep exhaustion that came from living on the edge of survival every single day. Celeste returned with a thick towel and a mug of something that smelled like heaven. Tea with honey and lemon, the steam rising up like prayers. Drink, Celeste said, handing her the mug. Slowly. Zuri wrapped her hands around the ceramic, letting the heat seep into her frozen fingers. She took a sip. It was perfect, sweet and warm, and everything she needed in that moment. Celeste sat down across from her, her posture straight, her eyes never leaving Zuri's face. What's your name? Zuri. Zuri Thompson. How old are you, Zuri? 17. I'll be 18 in 2 months. Celeste nodded slowly, processing. Where are your parents? The question landed like a punch. Zuri looked down at her tea, watching the surface ripple with her breathing. My mama passed 3 years ago. Cancer. We didn't have good insurance, and by the time they found it, she trailed off. Some stories didn't need endings. The middle was painful enough. And your father? Never knew him. Mama said he left before I was born. Said he wasn't ready to be a father, whatever that means. I'm sorry, Celeste said. And Zuri could tell she meant it. Not the performative sorry people gave when they didn't know what else to say, but the real kind. The kind that came from understanding loss. It's okay, Zuri lied. I'm managing. Are you? Celeste's voice was gentle, but firm. Because you look like you haven't eaten in days. You're wearing shoes that don't fit, and a jacket that won't keep you warm through tonight. And you walked 40 blocks in the rain to return my wallet, instead of taking the money that could have fed you for a month. Zuri felt her throat tighten. She didn't want pity. She'd rather starve than take pity. I'm fine, she said, but her voice betrayed her. I'm between places right now. The shelter's full, but I'll find something. I always do. Celeste was quiet for a long moment. She picked up her wallet from the table, opened it, and pulled out $500 bills. She held them out to Zuri. Here, take this, for returning my wallet. For being honest, when being dishonest would have been easier. Zuri stared at the money. It would solve so many problems. A week in a cheap motel, food, new shoes, maybe even a phone, so she could start applying for jobs again. But something in her chest twisted. She'd returned the wallet because it was right, not because she wanted a reward. Taking the money felt like it would cheapen what she'd done. Like it would prove everyone right who said nothing was free, that goodness was just another transaction. I can't take that, Zuri said quietly. Celeste's eyebrows rose. Why not? Because I didn't do it for money. I did it because, Zuri struggled to find the words, because my mama taught me that who we are isn't determined by what we have. It's determined by what we do when nobody's watching. And I want to be somebody she'd be proud of. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Celeste slowly put the money back in her wallet, but her expression had changed. There was something in her eyes now, recognition, admiration, and something else Zuri couldn't quite name. Your mother was a wise woman, Celeste said softly. My mother told me something similar. She said, Celeste, the world's gonna try to break you. It's gonna tell you that being black and being a woman means you gotta be twice as good to get half as much. And she was right. But she also told me that when you make it, and you will make it, you got a responsibility. To remember where you came from, to reach back and pull others up. Celeste stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city. I grew up in Newark, single mother, 3 kids. We lived in a two-bedroom apartment that always smelled like mold and yesterday's cooking. My mother worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, serving lunch at a diner, doing hair in our kitchen on weekends. She was never home, but everything she did was for us. She turned back to Zuri. I was smart, got a scholarship to NYU, studied business, graduated top of my class. But when I tried to get my first job, nobody wanted to hire the black girl from Newark. I was too aggressive, too ambitious, too much. So I started my own company, tech consulting. Took every risk, worked every hour, fought every battle. And now, she gestured at the apartment, at the life she'd built. Now I'm the CEO of a company worth $500 million. I've got 200 employees. I've got clients across the country. I made it. That's amazing, Zuri said. And she meant it. It is, Celeste agreed. But here's what I learned. Success without purpose is just wealth, and wealth without responsibility is just greed. I didn't build this company just to make money. I built it to prove something, to show that Black women can lead, can innovate, can change the game, and to create opportunities for people who look like us, who came from where I came from. She sat back down, leaning forward, her eyes intense. So here's what I'm going to offer you, Zuri. And before you say no, I want you to really hear me. I want you to work for me. Zuri's heart stopped. Work for you? Yes. You start Monday morning, 9 a.m. You'll be my personal assistant. You'll shadow me, learn the business, help with projects. The pay is $40,000 a year to start. Full benefits, health insurance, dental, vision. And I'll cover the cost of night classes if you want to finish high school and go to college. Zuri couldn't breathe. $40,000 a year. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having. It was a life, a real life. But the voice in her head, the one that sounded like disappointment, like failure, like every adult who'd given up on her, started whispering, "This is charity. This is pity. She doesn't really want you. She just feels bad for you. You'll mess it up. You always do." Zuri's voice cracked. "I don't understand. Why me? You don't know me. I could mess everything up. I don't have experience. I don't have references. You're just honest," Celeste interrupted. "You're just brave. You're just someone who walked 40 blocks in the rain to do the right thing when doing the wrong thing would have been so much easier. Do you know how rare that is, Zuri? Do you know how many people I've met in boardrooms and conferences who would have taken that money without a second thought, who would have justified it, rationalized it, convinced themselves they deserved it?" She reached across and took Zuri's hand. Her grip was firm, warm, real. "I'm not offering you this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering you this because I see something in you, something I saw in myself a long time ago. Potential, integrity, fire, and I'm not gonna let you waste it sleeping in shelters and wearing shoes that don't fit." Tears started falling down Zuri's face before she could stop them. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, hope. The feeling of being seen for the first time in years. "I don't know what to say," Zuri whispered. "Say yes," Celeste said simply. "Say yes, and then let me help you. Not as charity, not as pity, but as an investment in you, in what you can become." Zuri looked at this woman, this stranger who was offering her everything, and made a decision that would change her life forever. "Yes," she said. "Yes. Thank you. I won't let you down. I promise." Celeste smiled, and it transformed her face. "I know you won't. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay in my guest room tonight. Tomorrow, we're going shopping. You need clothes for work, shoes that fit, and everything else. Monday, you start. But between now and then, I need you to understand something." Her expression grew serious. "This isn't going to be easy. Working for me means working harder than you've ever worked. It means showing up every day ready to learn, ready to grow, ready to prove yourself. Not to me, to yourself. The world is going to doubt you. People in my company are going to question why I hired a 17-year-old with no experience. Some of them will assume you're here because of pity or because of some diversity quota. You're going to have to prove them wrong every single day." Zuri nodded, her jaw set. "I can do that. I know you can, because you already have. You proved it tonight when you walked through that door." But what Celeste didn't tell Zuri, what she couldn't tell her yet, was that this wasn't just about hiring an assistant. This was about something deeper, something personal. And in the coming weeks, Zuri would discover that Celeste Whitmore had her own demons, her own past, her own reasons for seeing herself in a homeless teenager who returned a wallet in the rain. And together, they would face a test that would challenge everything they believed about trust, loyalty, and what it really means to give someone a second chance. 3 months later, Zuri Thompson sat at a desk on the 15th floor of the Whitmore Consulting Building, staring at a computer screen that displayed financial projections she was beginning to understand. It felt like a dream. No, it felt like someone else's life that she was borrowing, waiting for the real owner to come back and tell her the mistake had been discovered, that she had to leave, that girls like her didn't get happy endings. But every morning, she woke up in the small studio apartment Celeste had helped her secure. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. With a bed that didn't have bed bugs, and a bathroom she didn't have to share with strangers. Every morning, she put on clothes that fit, ate breakfast that she'd bought with money she'd earned, and took the subway to a job that was teaching her what it meant to build something meaningful. Celeste had been right. It wasn't easy. The other employees had looked at her with suspicion at first. Who was this kid with no college degree, no experience? Who got to work directly with the CEO? The whispers started immediately. Nepotism, diversity hire, pet project. Zuri heard them all, felt the eyes on her back whenever she walked through the office. But she also heard Celeste's voice in her head. Prove them wrong every single day. So she did. She arrived early and stayed late. She learned everything she could: how to manage Celeste's impossible schedule, how to prepare briefs for client meetings, how to navigate the complex politics of a company where everyone was fighting to prove their worth. She made mistakes, sent emails to the wrong people, double-booked meetings, once ordered lunch for a client with a severe shellfish allergy, but she learned from each one, never making the same error twice. And slowly, the whispers changed. Not from everyone. There were still people who looked at her and saw only what they wanted to see, but from enough people that it mattered. The other assistants started asking her for advice. Junior consultants began including her in lunch conversations. Even some of the senior staff nodded at her in the hallways now, acknowledging her existence. But the person who mattered most was Celeste. Their relationship had evolved into something Zuri couldn't quite name. It wasn't mother-daughter. Zuri's mama was still too present in her heart for that. It wasn't quite mentorship either, though Celeste taught her everything. It was something deeper: understanding, connection, the recognition between two people who'd fought their way out of darkness and knew what it cost. They talked, not just about work, but about life. Celeste told Zuri about her own journey, the racism she'd faced, the sexism that tried to keep her small, the moments when she'd wanted to give up but pushed through anyway. Zuri told Celeste about the shelter, about the hunger, about the nights when she'd wondered if it was worth it to keep trying. "It's always worth it," Celeste had said one late evening, when they were the only ones left in the office. "Even when it doesn't feel like it, especially then." But on this particular Wednesday afternoon, everything changed. Zuri was at her desk, reviewing notes for tomorrow's board meeting, when she heard raised voices coming from Celeste's office. That wasn't unusual. Celeste was passionate about her work, and sometimes passion came with volume. But there was something different about this, something sharp, angry. The door opened, and a man stormed out. Zuri recognized him: Trevor Bancroft, the company's CFO. White, mid-50s, always impeccably dressed, always looking at Zuri like she was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. His face was red. "This is a mistake, Celeste, a huge mistake. And when the board hears about this, they're going to agree with me." Celeste appeared in the doorway, her expression controlled, but her eyes blazing. "The board will hear about it from me, Trevor, in the proper context, not from you spreading rumors and half-truths." "Half-truths?" Trevor's voice rose. "You're risking everything we've built, everything I've helped you build. For what? For some misguided sense of social responsibility? Get out of my office, Trevor, before you say something you can't take back." Trevor looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in Celeste's face stopped him. He turned and stormed toward the elevator, not bothering to hide his anger. The office had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Celeste's eyes swept across the space, and people suddenly remembered they had work to do. Heads went back down. Fingers started typing. The performance of productivity resumed. "Zuri," Celeste said quietly. "My office, please." Zuri's stomach dropped. She gathered her notebook and followed Celeste inside, closing the door behind her. Celeste sat down at her desk, suddenly looking tired in a way Zuri had never seen before. Not just physically tired, but soul-tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting battles that never seem to end. "There's something I need to tell you," Celeste said. "Something I should have told you sooner, but I was waiting for the right time. And apparently, the right time just ran out." Zuri sat down, her heart pounding. "What's wrong? Did I do something?" "No. God, no. This isn't about you." "Well, it is, but not in the way you think." Celeste took a breath. "I'm stepping down as CEO." The words hit Zuri like a physical blow. "What? Why?" "The company's doing great. We just landed the Peterson account. Revenue's up 30% from last quarter. I'm not leaving because the company's failing, Zuri. I'm leaving because there's something else I need to do, something I've been planning for a long time." She turned her computer screen toward Zuri. On it was a detailed business plan for a new company. Elevation Initiative. "It's a non-profit," Celeste explained, "focused on providing job training, education, and employment opportunities for homeless youth, specifically Black and brown kids who've been failed by every system that was supposed to protect them. Kids like you." Zuri's breath caught. "I've been working on this for 2 years," Celeste continued, quietly, "saving money, making connections, building partnerships with companies willing to hire graduates from our program. But to make it work, to really make it work, I need to focus on it full-time. I can't run Whitmore Consulting and build Elevation at the same time. Not if I want either of them to succeed." "But Trevor, why was he so angry?" Celeste's expression hardened. "Because I'm taking 20% of the company's annual profits and donating them to Elevation. It's in my power as majority shareholder, and it's what I want to do with my money. But Trevor and some of the other executives think it's irresponsible. They think I'm putting politics over profit. They think I'm, and I quote, letting my emotions cloud my business judgment." Zuri felt anger rising in her chest. "That's ridiculous. This company makes millions. 20% is nothing compared to—" "It's not about the money," Celeste interrupted. "Not really. It's about control. It's about fear. Trevor and people like him are afraid that if I get away with this, if I succeed at prioritizing social impact over maximum profit, other CEOs might start doing the same. And that threatens the whole system they've built their careers on." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "When I started this company, I told myself I was doing it to prove something, to show the world that a Black woman from Newark could build an empire. And I did that. But somewhere along the way, I realized that the empire wasn't enough. Because what good is success if you're not using it to change the lives of people who need it most?" She turned back to Zuri. "You changed my life, Zuri. That night, when you returned my wallet, you reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. Not for the money or the power or the prestige, but to make a difference. To be the person I needed when I was 17 and scared. and convinced the world didn't want me. Tears were streaming down Zuri's face now. So what happens now? Now I launch Elevation, and I need you to come with me. Zuri blinked. What? I need a co-director, someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side, someone who's lived in shelters and gone hungry and had to fight for every inch of ground. Someone the kids we're trying to help will look at and see themselves. But I'm 18. I barely graduated high school. I've only been working here for 3 months. And in those 3 months, you've learned more than most people learn in 3 years. You're smart, Zuri. You're dedicated. You're honest. And most importantly, you care. Not about looking good or getting credit, but about actually helping people. Celeste came around the desk and knelt in front of Zuri's chair, looking up at her. I'm not asking you to do this alone. I'll be there every step of the way, but I need you to say yes. I need you to take this leap with me, because Elevation isn't just about helping homeless kids. It's about proving that people deserve second chances, that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going, that one act of integrity, one decision to do the right thing, can change everything. Zuri looked at this woman who had saved her life and was now asking her to help save others. The fear was there, the voice telling her she wasn't qualified, wasn't ready, would fail. But underneath the fear was something stronger, purpose. Yes, Zuri said, her voice steady despite the tears. Yes, I'll do it. Celeste's face broke into a smile that lit up the entire room. She pulled Zuri into a hug, and for a moment they were just two women who understood what it meant to survive, to fight, to win. But then the door burst open. Trevor stood there, and he wasn't alone. Behind him were two members of the board of directors, both white men in expensive suits, with expressions that said they owned the world and weren't about to let anyone forget it. Celeste, Trevor said, his voice cold and formal, we need to talk about your plans, about your judgment, and about whether you're fit to continue making decisions for this company. The confrontation that followed would become the talk of corporate New York for months. Trevor and the board members tried everything. Legal arguments about fiduciary duty, threats about stock prices and investor lawsuits, even personal attacks on Celeste's mental state and emotional stability. But Celeste stood her ground. She presented her case with the same brilliance and strategic thinking that had built Whitmore Consulting in the first place. She showed them the numbers, how the donation would actually enhance the company's reputation and attract socially conscious clients. She showed them the partnerships she'd already secured. She showed them that Elevation wasn't just charity, it was smart business. And when they still tried to fight her, she reminded them of something they'd conveniently forgotten. I own 51% of this company, she said, her voice steel wrapped in silk, which means when it comes down to it, I don't need your permission. I don't need your approval. I don't need anything from you except your decision about whether you want to stay and be part of something meaningful, or whether you want to leave and find another company where profit is the only thing that matters. Trevor's face went from red to purple. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Celeste said. But it's my mistake to make, and unlike some people, I'm willing to risk my comfort to change someone's life. She looked at Zuri when she said it, and Zuri understood. This wasn't just about the company or the money or the nonprofit. This was about what kind of person you chose to be when you had power, whether you used it to protect yourself or to lift others. Trevor left. So did one of the board members. But the other one, an older black man named Bernard, who'd been mostly quiet during the confrontation, stayed behind. I think what you're doing is remarkable, he said to Celeste, and brave. Count me in as a supporter and a donor. 3 weeks later, Elevation Initiative officially launched. The media coverage was intense. Some outlets praised Celeste's social consciousness, while others criticized her for woke capitalism and virtue signaling. But none of that mattered to the 15 kids who enrolled in the first training program. 15 kids who'd been living on the streets. 15 kids who'd been told they didn't matter, that they were statistics. that they'd never amount to anything. 15 kids who were given a chance. Zuri stood in front of them on the first day of orientation, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "My name is Zuri Thompson," she said. "6 months ago, I was homeless, sleeping in shelters when I could get a bed, sleeping on the street when I couldn't. I was hungry all the time, scared all the time, convinced that nothing I did would ever matter because the world had already decided I didn't matter." She paused, looking at their faces, some skeptical, some hopeful, all of them guarded in the way people who've been hurt too many times learn to be. But then something happened. I made a decision to do the right thing, even when doing the wrong thing would have been easier. And that decision changed my life. Not because good things happen to good people. Life isn't that simple. But because someone saw me, really saw me, and gave me a chance. She gestured to Celeste, who was standing in the back of the room. "Now we're giving you that same chance. But I need you to understand something. This isn't charity. This isn't a handout. This is an opportunity. And what you do with it is up to you. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to show up every day and prove that you belong here. Not to us, to yourselves." One of the kids, a boy who couldn't have been more than 16, with eyes that had seen too much, raised his hand. "What if we fail?" he asked. "What if we mess up?" Zuri smiled. "Then you try again." That's what I did. That's what Ms. Whitmore did. That's what everyone who's ever succeeded did. Failure isn't the end of the story. It's just a chapter, and you get to decide how the story ends. The program was hard. Some kids dropped out. Others struggled but pushed through. But by the end of the 6-month training program, 11 of the original 15 graduated. And all 11 got job offers from companies that had partnered with Elevation. 2 years later, Elevation had trained and placed over 200 young people. The program had expanded to 3 other cities. Celeste had been profiled in Forbes, Time, and the New York Times. But more importantly, 200 kids who'd been invisible were now building careers, renting apartments, planning futures. And Zuri had become the face of Elevation's mission. Not because Celeste pushed her forward, but because the kids they served needed to see someone who understood. Someone who'd walked their path and made it out the other side. She was 20 now, enrolled in college part-time, studying business and social work. She still worked at Elevation full-time, still sat in on every orientation, still told her story to every new cohort. Because she understood something fundamental. Hope isn't abstract. Hope has a face. Hope has a voice. Hope is someone who looks like you, telling you that survival is possible. But success doesn't erase the past. It just gives you better tools to carry it. On a Tuesday evening in late October, Zuri was leaving the Elevation office when she saw him. A man standing across the street, staring at the building. Something about him was familiar. The shape of his face, the way he held himself. He looked homeless, worn down, lost. Zuri's first instinct was to keep walking. New York taught you that. Don't make eye contact. Don't engage. Protect yourself first. But she'd spent the last 2 years learning a different lesson. The one Celeste had taught her. The one her mama had tried to teach her before the cancer took her voice. She crossed the street. "You okay?" Zuri asked gently. "You need help?" The man looked up, and Zuri's breath caught in her throat. His eyes. She knew those eyes. She'd seen them in the mirror her entire life. "I'm looking for someone," the man said, his voice rough with disuse and regret. "Her name is Zuri Thompson. I heard she works here. I heard she's doing good things. I heard," his voice broke, "I heard my daughter is alive." The world stopped spinning. Zuri stared at this man, this stranger who was somehow not a stranger at all. Her father, the man who'd left before she was born. The absence that had shaped her life as much as any presence could have. She should have been angry. She should have told him to leave, that he'd lost the right to call her his daughter the moment he walked away. That's what the hurt part of her wanted to do. But she looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she recognized: shame, regret, the kind of brokenness that comes from running for so long you forget what you were running from. Why? The word came out harder than she intended. Why now? After 20 years, why now? Her father, she couldn't bring herself to call him that, but she didn't know what else to call him. Looked down at his hands. They were shaking. I saw you on the news, he said quietly. 3 months ago, they did a story about elevation, about kids getting second chances, and they interviewed you. You talked about your mother, about being homeless, about finding your way back. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. I didn't know your mother died. I didn't know you were on the streets. I didn't know. He stopped, collecting himself. That's a lie. I could have known. I should have known. But I was too much of a coward to find out. I left because I was scared. Scared of being a father. Scared of failing. Scared of everything. And I've been running ever since. So why stop now? Zuri's voice was cold, protective. The voice of someone who'd learned not to trust easy apologies. Because I'm dying, he said simply. Liver failure, 6 months, maybe less. And I realized I'm gonna die, having never done one brave thing in my entire life. Never faced one thing I was afraid of. Never tried to make right even one of the 1,000 wrongs I've committed. He took a step closer, but not too close. Respecting her space, her boundaries. I'm not here asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not here asking to be in your life. I lost that right a long time ago. I'm just here to tell you that I'm sorry, that I was wrong, that the biggest mistake I ever made was walking away from you and your mother, and that even though I don't deserve to say it, I'm proud of you, proud of what you've become, proud that you're better than I ever was. Zuri felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not for him. You want me to tell you it's okay? She asked. You want me to hug you and say I forgive you and invite you to dinner like we're a normal family? No, her father said. I want you to live your life knowing that your father was a coward and a fool, but that he loved you, even when he wasn't brave enough to show it, even when he ran. I want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong, that you deserved better, that your mother deserved better. He pulled something from his pocket, a photograph, worn and faded. Zuri recognized it immediately. Her mother, young and beautiful, holding a newborn baby. I kept this, he said, holding it out to her. Carried it with me everywhere. Every time I thought about coming back, I'd look at it and convince myself you were better off without me, that I'd just mess up your life the way I'd messed up everything else. Zuri took the photograph with trembling hands. Her mother's smile, her own tiny face, peaceful and unaware of what was coming. A moment of pure love. Frozen in time. You would have messed it up, Zuri said, and her voice cracked. If you'd come back and left again. If you'd made promises you couldn't keep. If you'd been the kind of father who was there sometimes, but not when it mattered. Mom and I, we did okay without you. We survived. I know, her father said, and I'm glad. I'm glad you had her. I'm glad you had the strength she had. I'm glad you became who you are. They stood there in the growing darkness, two people connected by blood, but separated by choices that couldn't be undone. I don't know if I can forgive you, Zuri finally said. I don't know if I even want to try. You missed everything. My whole life, every birthday, every milestone, every moment when I needed a father, and you weren't there. I know. But, Zuri took a shaky breath. I work with kids who've been abandoned. Kids whose parents chose drugs over them, chose themselves over them, chose running over staying. And I tell them every day that they're not defined by what was done to them, that they get to choose who they become. She looked at her father, really looked at him, and made a decision. I learned something these past 2 years. I learned that second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about choosing what you do with whatever time you have left. And I learned that from someone who saw potential in a homeless kid who returned a wallet. She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. There's a program at Elevation for adults, people who are trying to get back on their feet. It's not much, housing assistance, job training, counseling. I'm sending you the information, if you want it. If you're serious about doing something brave, with whatever time you have left." Her father stared at her, and something broke open in his face. Hope, the fragile, dangerous kind. "I don't deserve—" "No," Zuri interrupted. "You don't, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is what you do next, not for me, not to make yourself feel better, but because it's the right thing to do." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "My mother's buried in Queens, Calvary Cemetery, Section 12. If you're serious about making amends, start there. Tell her you're sorry. Tell her you were wrong. Tell her that her daughter turned out okay, despite everything. Maybe that'll mean something." She walked away before he could respond, her vision blurred with tears, her heart a mess of emotions she couldn't name. When she got back to her apartment, Celeste was waiting. She'd texted her on the way, and Celeste had come immediately. Because that's what she did. That's what they did for each other now. Zuri collapsed on her couch, and the tears finally came. Not sad tears, exactly. Not happy tears either. Something more complex. The tears of someone processing the weight of their own grace. "I saw him," she said when she could speak. "My father, he showed up. He apologized. He's dying." Celeste sat beside her, not speaking, just present. "And I helped him," Zuri continued. "I gave him information about the program. I told him where Mama's buried. I gave him a chance, even though he doesn't deserve one." "Do you regret it?" Celeste asked softly. Zuri thought about it, really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "Because I didn't do it for him. I did it for me. Because I don't want to be the kind of person who holds on to anger so tight that it shapes who I become. I want to be the kind of person who gives second chances, even when it's hard, even when it hurts." She looked at Celeste. "You taught me that. When you gave me a chance that night, you could have just given me money and sent me away. You could have patted yourself on the back for being charitable and never thought about me again. But you didn't. You saw me. And you gave me a chance to become more than I thought I could be." Celeste's eyes were wet now too. "You gave yourself that chance, Zuri. I just opened the door. You're the one who walked through it. You're the one who did the work. You're the one who chose to be extraordinary." "We both did," Zuri said. "That's what I'm learning. Nobody makes it alone. We all need someone to open the door, and then we need to be brave enough to open doors for others." 6 months later, Zuri stood at her mother's grave. It was the anniversary of her death, a day Zuri had always spent alone, wrapped in grief and memory. But this year, she wasn't alone. Her father stood beside her, sober now, for 157 days. He'd told her the exact number when she asked. He was in the adult program at Elevation, living in transitional housing, working part-time at a community center. He was trying. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but trying. They weren't a family. Zuri didn't know if they ever would be, but they were something. Two people learning how to exist in each other's lives, learning how to carry the past without letting it crush the present. "I told her about you," her father said quietly. "About the work you're doing, about who you've become. I think she knows. I think wherever she is, she's proud." "She would have been prouder if you'd stayed," Zuri said. "Not cruel, just honest." "I know. And I'll spend whatever time I have left earning the right to stand here beside you, if you'll let me." Zuri didn't answer immediately. She placed flowers on her mother's grave, sunflowers, her favorite, and stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, "Mama used to tell me that everybody deserves grace, even people who hurt us, even people who let us down." She said that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I didn't understand what she meant when I was little, but I understand now. She turned to her father. "You're not off the hook. You don't get to skip to the part where everything's forgiven and we're okay. But you get a chance. The same chance I got. The same chance the kids at Elevation get. To do better. to be better, to choose who you become from this point forward. Her father nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, that's more than I deserve. Yeah, Zuri agreed. It is, but she said it with something that might, eventually, become love. 1 year after that conversation, Elevation Initiative celebrated its 5th anniversary. The program had expanded to 10 cities. Over 1,000 young people had been trained and placed in jobs. The success rate was 87%, far higher than anyone had predicted. Zuri stood on stage beside Celeste, looking out at a room full of people who believed in second chances, donors, partners, politicians who'd fought to replicate the elevation model in their own cities, and most importantly, graduates, young people wearing professional clothes and carrying hope like armor. 5 years ago, Celeste said into the microphone, I met a 17-year-old girl who walked 40 blocks in the rain to return my wallet. She could have taken the money inside. Lord knows she needed it, but she didn't. She chose integrity over survival. And that choice changed both of our lives. She turned to Zuri. Zuri Thompson is now the executive director of Elevation Initiative. She runs our operations, oversees our programs, and serves as proof that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. She is the embodiment of what we believe, that every person deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be given a chance to become who they were meant to be. The applause was thunderous. Zuri stepped up to the microphone, her heart full of everything she couldn't quite name. I used to think second chances were about luck, she said. About being in the right place at the right time. About meeting the right person who decides to help you. And maybe there's some truth to that. But I've learned that second chances are really about choices. The choice to do the right thing even when it costs you. The choice to see someone else's humanity even when the world tells you they don't matter. The choice to believe that people can change, can grow, can become more than their circumstances. She looked at Celeste. Ms. Whitmore gave me a second chance. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I gave her one too. The chance to remember why she started this journey. The chance to use her success for something meaningful. The chance to prove that the system can be changed from the inside out. Then she looked out at the audience, at the graduates, at the people who were just starting their journeys. So here's what I want to leave you with. You don't have to be perfect to deserve a second chance. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to try, to show up, to do the work. And when you make it, because you will make it, reach back. Open the door for someone else. Give them the chance someone gave you. She paused, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Because that's how we change the world, not with grand gestures or perfect plans, but one returned wallet at a time, one opened door at a time. One person choosing to see another person's worth when everyone else has decided they have none. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Later that night, after the celebration had ended and the venue had emptied, Zuri and Celeste sat on the steps outside the building, looking up at the New York sky. You know what's wild? Zuri said. If I'd kept that wallet, if I'd taken the money and run, none of this would exist. Elevation wouldn't exist. Those 1,000 kids wouldn't have jobs. My whole life would be different. Do you ever wonder what would have happened? Celeste asked. If you'd made a different choice. Zuri thought about it. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember something my mama used to say. She said that every choice we make is like dropping a stone in water. We can't see where the ripples go, but they go somewhere. They touch things we'll never know about. She smiled. I returned a wallet. That was my stone. And the ripples. She gestured at the building behind them, at the city around them, at the future spreading out like an ocean. The ripples are still going. Celeste put her arm around Zuri's shoulders. Your mother would be so proud of you. Yeah, Zuri said softly. I think she would be. They sat in comfortable silence, two women who'd found each other in the rain and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. And somewhere in Queens, In a cemetery where sunflowers grew wild over forgotten graves, a mother's spirit rested easy, knowing her daughter had become everything she'd hoped for and more, not because life had been kind, but because when given a choice between who the world said she was and who she chose to become, Zuri Thompson picked herself every single time. Now let me ask you something. If you found a wallet with more money than you'd seen in your life, and you were hungry, homeless, and invisible to the world, would you have walked 40 blocks in the rain to return it? Would you have chosen integrity over survival? And if someone gave you a second chance when you deserved nothing, would you reach back and open that door for someone else? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's talk about what we'd really do when nobody's watching and everything's on the line. Because that's where character lives, not in what we say we'd do, but in what we do when it costs us everything to do the right thing. Your move.